welcome all, and I just want to thank ALP and all the presenters that have been part of this virtual conference. It's a first. It feels pretty good. I mean, I'm as zoomed out as anybody could be, I think, with both business Zooms and personal Zooms. I mean, I'm Zoomed. But it is what it is, and it's going to continue. I like getting the little, I like getting the little snapshots of people's homes and where they work and stuff. This is not where I work, by the way. Mine is a complete chaotic mess, but there you go. So this is about, and I'm going to share my screen here, positioning your inn for sale. And in the previous, I just want to, Emily, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the bars of all the people. That's not interfering with the screen shot, is it? Okay, good. And I just got my coffee, which is really good. So in the previous presentations, there was, Scott and Allison, talking about when you open, how to do that, what you need to think about, all of that. I'm starting out this with some stats, with some data. So how I get my information, and it's really gathering information and knowledge as much as I can, and as much as you guys do out there in ownership land, is obviously I listen to Johns Hopkins and the CDC for my health prompts, and then I have CB Richard Ellis, which is a very big commercial group that I get their newsletters and their data, and also the AHLA, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that there's a seminar tomorrow at AHLA, of which you are a member because you're a member of ALP. They're going to have another Zoom call, another webinar on their new protocols for safety that they launched yesterday or the day before. And it has been mentioned today, but they have all the protocols for cleaning and getting your inn open safely. And I want to say that along with that, I want you all to assess the risk. There's going to be a risk until there's a vaccine. So it's how you balance that risk and opening your business. My suggestion is that make sure that when you do, that you're protecting yourself and your staff. It's really important. And maybe your governor says it's fine, but you really have to make those decisions yourself. And you'll know when that time is, just like I'll know when I can get back into a plane. It's not going to be this month. I don't think it'll be next month. So think about what you're willing to do, and that's what your guest is willing to do. So how do you convert them? How do you tell Eliot that it's okay to get on a plane? How do you tell Eliot that it's okay to come up to your inn? Those are the things you need to be working on. But most importantly is your own health and the health of your staff and the health of your family. So please be cognizant of that. Is this, you know what I think? I think this is a PDF, but that's okay. We can deal with this. In sales priorities and analytics. So four things I'm going to cover, from precipitous decline to recover and stability, observations that I'm going to give you. Timing, when you're ready to transfer your property, will the marketplace be receptive? And will there be potential buyers there for you? Certainly not this month. That's not true. We have a couple of deals that may close. Balance, finding the equilibrium between your expectations and the realities of the market. And preparation. What are the key factors to consider before listing your property? So I know that like my business, your business, survival mode for the next 3 or 4 quarters at least. And you've been given a lot of information of how to do that with your mortgages and the SBA and everything else. So I hope that's well underway. I am surprised that I got calls last week from people not my clients who hadn't started any of that. And I just, it's, you got to be doing this for self-survival. Get those deferred payments, get those, anything that you can from the SBA and the feds. 12 to 18 month recovery. And when I say recovery, it's not full recovery. It's when can we start to see some light at the end of the tunnel? And that's what I'm saying is it's going to be that's coming from a lot of people in commercial real estate that are looking at all the different asset classes, and hotels being the biggest asset class that has been impacted most dramatically. And some of the larger hotels could be down up to 50% of the year on the top line, which would then equate into almost a 70% hit in their earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation. From booking.com, bookings are down 85. I saw that's now even higher. I think it's up to 87 today. And precipitous decline in your RevPAR, revenue per available room, up to almost 50% for 2020. These are the things. These are the analytics that we are seeing from hoteliers, from commercial real estate people, and others. So it's unprecedented. It's unbelievable. But there will be a recovery. There will be. I think at first with lodging, they were saying it was going to be a V, precipitous decline and steep recovery, and now it's more like the Nike swoosh. It's going to be a little bit more gradual on the way back up, but it is going to be happening. Anthony Melcori, the hotel madness guy, he says, move from fear zone to learning zone to growth zone. And we are, I hope everybody's out of the fear zone. There's not too much we can do except for listen to the CDC and your other health professionals to take care of yourself and do the right things. So we're in the learning zone, and you need to get all the data you possibly can from as many sources as you can and stay abreast of what is happening in both our economy and the travel industry and the hotel and in business also. And then we're going to go into the growth zone, and that's going to happen, and no one can put a date on it or a month on it, but it's going to happen. So live in the present and focus on the future. As Scott and Allison said, you've got to keep yourself out in front of your clients. You have to be that face, be that brand, be that property that people think of. So, and I think I said something in my previous talk, is that yes, some people will say, well, Whitestone is a marketing company, so of course they're saying to keep your marketing up. Well, yeah, okay, but they're right. Not only am I paid to market my properties that people have listed with me, but for my own business, I have to keep doing that. It's a matter of when this is over, when this starts to break, what are people going to do? They're going to go to the people that they've seen most often. So you have to keep going. But, first and foremost is safety first. Do not take risks with this disease. I'm sure some of you have some more firsthand experiences. I know Allison and Scott did. I only know people that have gotten through it, and it's absolutely horrendous and nasty, and a lot of people aren't making it through. So everything you do to reopen, you have to be thinking about safety first. And then look at a way to adapt to as consumer sentiment and desires change. And of course, what does that mean? That means how do you convince them? How do you see that what they're after is to get out safely? They want to visit you, but they want to feel comfortable doing it. And so what are you doing to make that and to fulfill those desires? This is certainly an opportunity to reevaluate your long-term proposition and position. I hope you're all doing that here at EliotDalton.com, where Tish and I run our business here. We are proposing and getting things ready to launch all our seminars online. That's a big change because we'll see you in Zoom perhaps, but it's not going to be an all-day affair where I really get to know people, and there's a lot of that. And so that's a repositioning of my business. And we're looking at different things. So you too can have this opportunity to get rid of the things that weren't working and take a look at what's coming and adapt. And how you reopen will directly affect guest satisfaction and confidence now and loyalty into the future. So how you reopen, how you're proposing that, how you're marketing that, I want to give you two examples. The first one is this one, and due to unconstitutional mandates by our governor, that's a nice statement, we are no longer able to accept reservations on our website. If you're a state resident, then you can make a reservation with us by phone or email starting June 1st. So please consider vacationing within our state this summer so we are not forced to close our business permanently. This is a cry for help. It's not instilling any confidence in me to want to go and be at that property, none whatsoever. First, they're saying that the governor is unconstitutional when he's trying to do the best possible things he or she can do for the safety and health of the constituents in the state. So obviously, this is a wrong message. This is one of many that I just pulled off, but so much has changed. Here are some of the changes that you can expect: 48-hour quarantine time in the rooms. And most hotels, so this would be half our rooms are available. So even if they had 100% bookings, they'd really only be booking 50% of the rooms. Hotels are starting off in general, not the Asia market, but the European market, looking at 10, 15, 20% of their rooms being open. And so and of course they're faced with much bigger things. What do you do with the lobby? What do you do with the elevator? What do how do you queue up people? All of those things. And what are the gateways that they're using to get to those hotels? Is it public transportation? So what do you do about that? So they have a lot bigger nut to crack to get open than you do. New limited contact check-ins, breakfast will be delivered to your room, staff will be masked. I suggest, gloves. They're working with local delivery people, and they have a COVID release of liability. And so that's a lot different than the governor's unconstitutional and please come help because I'm going out of business. As Allison and Scott said, you do have to put on your happy face. It's not the easiest thing to do when you're losing your business revenue completely. As has been said, and it will be said again, the emergence phase of recovery, domestic travel and local properties will be the first to recover. And so I'll get into it in a second, but that is what you have to concentrate on. That pay-per-click, they said, look at your pay-per-click. You can focus it if you use pay-per-click. Focus it on the local market. Really good idea. You should focus all marketing that you can do locally because that's who your first people will be. It'll be drivable. I know that's going to be my first foray out into the world. Will be something pretty close, 2 hours maybe. And this is a big one. Hospitality market will not be competing on price. Discounting rates alone will not increase demand. And there is always going to be this argument, and it was brought up this morning, is, you don't discount, you add value, added value and all of that. It is what everybody is saying, all the professionals in the big markets, when it comes to hospitality, is discounting up to this point. Discounting up to COVID has always not worked that well for luxury properties. Most luxury properties have kept their ADR, kept their rates up. Yes, their occupancy takes a hit, but their RevPAR doesn't take as big a hit. What's happening here is completely different because now we don't have any occupancy whatsoever. So how do you get that demand up? The main focus is building the consumer trust and confidence. The people who come to your properties are not going to discounted motel, hotel, the other classes of hotels. They are going to the what we would call the luxury, the upper set of assets in hotels. So discounting rate, you're going to have to do something, obviously, to do what you got to do. I get it. But that's not going to really increase demand because the prices are all being compressed between all those asset classes. It's not going to be about price. It's going to be about that third bullet point, building consumer trust and confidence. And that's done with marketing and how you arrange your inn, how you do your food, how you do all of those things. So focus on the things you can control, the marketing, the safe protocols, safe spaces, and building your local connections, because you're going to need food delivery. You're going to, people obviously can't go out to a restaurant right now, and there are some inns that are opening. So how do you do that? Well, you've got to make really good friends with delivery services and restaurants that are doing takeout, both for lunch and dinner. Recovery will happen. We don't know when, but it will. And so once again, you've got to keep focusing on the future. So timing. When you are ready to transfer your property, will the marketplace be receptive and will potential buyers be available? I did a similar seminar, 2 months ago. And when I put this slide up, it meant a whole lot of different things than it does now. It is going to be a different marketplace altogether. But we are going to be going into this emergence phase where there will be stability and recovery. Some people are feeling it a little bit already. Others will not feel it until the fall, I am sure. And that's an internal thing. It might not even show up on your books in the fall, but there seems to be consensus that at least we'll know more and see how reopening certain states works or not. And so once again, it'll be that trying to get confidence building for your clients. How will the volatility of markets and the economic shock affect buyer confidence and their level of risk? And I have examples. Everybody's an individual. Everybody's going to react differently. Some buyers were in contract in March and have pulled out because of this volatile market and just not knowing when things are going to open up. And I've had 2 properties go under contract since March. And those buyers certainly see the risks and are willing to take them. So it's the same as it always was. Are you risk averse or do you accept it and move forward? The people who I'm moving forward with are confident that they can see the possibilities, see the changes that they can make with these properties and make them whole once again, even if it takes a year or 18 months or whatever that looks like. They can tolerate risk and they're moving forward. Looking at your assets, the market values, I mean, the stock market, who looks at it anymore? It's too difficult to grasp. But yes, are we going into recession and will that become a depression if they're shooting up negative interest rates? Yeah, that's what everybody thinks is coming. There will be buyers out there that will see that as opportunity. Always have, always will. So when's a good time to sell? Hopefully when you want to, not when you have to. And that's pretty key. We wanted to position our inn. We were innkeepers for 15 years. We wanted to position our inn for sale. And we knew it could take a bit of time and we had some things to do before we put it on the market. One was to get all our taxes and P&Ls and everything else, all our financials into good shape. But we knew it would take some time and it did, not as long as we thought, but we were ready when time came. Sometimes things like this will throw everything out the window. You may find there are going to be properties that can't survive this, for longer than 4 months or 5. But I'm going to go through the things at the end of this, the things that you really need to do to make sure that you're ready at any time to put your property on the market. What will the cost of debt be for prospective buyers? Well, we just, in a previous session, Rick Newman went through the scenario of the SBA and the 7A loans. And I'm taking all that information to my buyer clients, because if you can close by the end of September with a 7A loan, you can have the SBA pay the first 6 months of interest, principal, and fees. And you know, he used an example of a fairly large inn, $2.5 million, where it saves the buyer over $70,000. So is that going to be a incentive? I think so, absolutely. This interest rate going down so low, is that going to be incentive? Absolutely. The people that have the assets and the capital to move forward to purchase a business may not have been affected as much as you. You always have to think that, you know, their cash might still be pretty good. So if they've always wanted to own a hospitality property, we do have people moving forward now, and we always will. It's a industry and a lifestyle that certainly I enjoyed, and that's why I'm here doing these things for sellers and helping buyers find their place, because it's a great lifestyle and certainly a good business too. How will the shutdown affect appraisals? Good question. We really don't know. However, those talked to 2 appraisers, 3 appraisers, and some community development corps, and of course people like Rick Newman and others in the lending industry. And this is an anomaly that nobody has ever seen. So if you had a strong business, or if your real estate value was strong for those smaller inns, and all of a sudden you have no revenue, that's going to be looked at differently, because your business was fine, the market was fine, it was a government shutdown. So appraisers are going to have to, hopefully, look at this as an anomaly and a one-off, and just look at these past 3-4 months as something that they won't put into averages. At least that's what we're hoping. Who's to say? But with a negative interest rate, banks will need to lend. They're going to need to lend. So I think that it is going to be it's going to be a buyer's market. So that's what I can say. And the appraisals, we'll just have to wait. But I'm working with as many as I can to try and get a readout, and we'll let you know as soon as I do. And same with the lender perception of hospitality as an asset class. When I say as an asset class, I'm comparing it to multifamily, industrial, retail, and office space. And it always has been, the black sheep of an asset class when it comes to the big commercial assets. And hospitality is going to be the hardest hit of all those classes. Retail's right there with you, but retail and hospitality. And office will be coming back. They're already, I think, Italy is now, their office space is now almost 30% back. So they'll come back quicker. Industrial hasn't been hit. So they've always looked at hospitality as a higher risk. So it will probably be more difficult to get loans on hospitality properties for the short term. And short term is, don't ask Eliot what short term is, but it's going to be for the next 6 months, 8 months. Balancing your expectations and realities. And so the 2020 appraisals, new analytics, what it's all going to be about, I've touched on that. And in my last session, is occupancy more important than the RevPAR? Should you change your revenue management practices? You need to get people there. That is, if there is no RevPAR because we don't have staff, you're going to be running it shorthanded when you start. There are going to be fewer people. So we think, and I've talked to quite a few professionals about this, they're going to be looking at occupancy when it comes to your performance in the next months when you start to reopen slowly. So that's key. And how do you do that? Well, it's instilling that confidence with your clients that they want to come stay. So you've got to get that occupancy up. How you do that with your marketing is paramount. And you know, the whole thing of rates, there are going to be as many opinions on that as there are people, and it's your business. You're going to have to figure that out. In all past 9/11s and recessions, discounting is a very difficult place to come back from once you did. And of course, it's something that the perception of the public has when you start dropping rates. It's like, what are you getting for that? That all being said, this is certainly different than any other time that's preceded it, except for the Depression. So will rates change? Yes, they have to, but just be really careful that the main focus is getting people to be there and be comfortable being there. It's not going to be about the price. It's about their comfort level. Scott and Allison and a few others talked today about managing capital improvements. Have you over improved? Certainly, it's this mixed bag. We have, yes, before you sell, you have to stop doing capital improvements. You should, unless they're absolutely necessary. So you don't need to do the big upgrades and all of those things, even though you've wanted to for years. If this is the year or 2 years that you're about to put on the market, let the next buyer do it the way they want. So you really need to manage those capital improvements. But then there's the whole thing of, okay, so now I'm reopening and I've got to change all my furniture around and I got to do all these other things I've got to now deliver food up to everybody's room. There are going to be costs involved. Do I need to buy coffee stations for all the rooms? Do I need to, how do I adapt to this? And is there a cost to that? Yes, there is. A lot of it, there's no cost by rearranging, moving things out of the rooms, making it simpler, all of those things. But there are going to be costs, so you have to weigh those as to how to balance that while not making major capital improvements that will really shake your bottom line, because that's the bottom line you want to see as strong if you're going to put your property on the market. And what is the importance of gross rent multipliers and capitalization rates on the value of your property? If you're a smaller inn and the value is in real estate, it doesn't have as much an effect. If you have a buyer or if you have a property who's at the shore, oceanfront, lakefront, on top of a mountain where the real estate value trumps the cash flow every time, it's not that important. People will, in the property now, certainly got there for other reasons. It wasn't all about the cash flow. It was about your lifestyle, the location, all of that. And so when gross revenue multipliers and cap rates are important, it's when the cash flow trumps the real estate. So you take my inn, we had 15 rooms. We were in upstate New York. We were very rural. Had a very large building, had many buildings and grounds and a pool and all of that. But the real estate value could never be as much because of our location as the cash flow. So if that's the case, you really have to drive your bottom line so that when a buyer comes in and looks at those books, looks at those tax returns, that those analytics are strong so that they get interested. Down at the bottom, how does cash flow, asset value, condition, motivation affect your saleability? So condition, we talked about the cash flow and the asset value. Those things have to be kept up. Asset value, if that is more valuable than your cash flow the other way. Condition, always. It's always the first impression. It's always, I think Marilyn in my last session mentioned the owner's quarters. It's just something you have to be on top of. You have to make it so that when they come, they see themselves in that property. But one of the biggest things I've seen over the last, I guess I've been doing this 15 years, is motivation. It's astounding because to me, when I look at one property that's priced, say, at $1 million and is cash flowing a strong bottom line, and my buyer, after seeing that and getting excited about it, goes and purchases another $1 million property with half the cash flow. Something's happening here, and a couple of things are happening, and the biggest thing is motivation. Whatever that was in that second property trumped cash flow. Okay, so there are plenty of people out there who are looking for things other than the bottom line. There are plenty of people that are looking strictly at the bottom line. In other words, they're telling us we could go anywhere in the country, find us a profitable inn. There are others who say, I can only go in this small area. Find me something, I can work with it. So all these things will affect how a buyer reacts to your property. The more things that you can have in order, the better. But motivation is key. And I see Linda Hayes, you're still muted, but I see Linda Hayes on this. And one of the things that she taught me, I think was, well, I can unmute you too, I guess, if you wanted to say anything.
I'm here.
Yeah, there you are. Was that when you're showing a property, it is so important to enroll that buyer into the area, into everything that you have around you. It's just, it makes such the difference. And I'd always teach that and try to make it happen, but until I was working with a real estate agent in the Finger Lakes. We worked together on this listing, and he took one of my buyers and spent all day with them. And that was the difference between them buying that property and the other two that they saw in the previous weeks, which to me were better properties. But it makes all the difference that you as a seller really need to have either you or your representative or somebody that really knows the area to do that. You'd agree, wouldn't you, Linda?
I would absolutely agree. It was a huge difference. I worked with Eliot earlier this year on someone who, obviously the financials of the property they were looking at made sense. Now it was a matter of they were buying a community to live in. And since it's the community I chose, then I could go ahead and pick them up and take them around, introduce them to people in the community. And that made a big difference for them.
Yeah.
So
it's paramount. You have to do that. So all those things are important. It's all dependent on the property and your location. As I mentioned mine, it was all about what that property produced on the bottom line. Yes, it came with 15 rooms and 4 buildings and all this other real estate, but that really wasn't what the value was. So these are some things, I'm sure many of you have heard these things before, but we're going to go through them. So the preparation, number 1, read it and weep. That's if it's a business, if you've got a sign out on a website, no matter how small, 3, 4 rooms up to 30, clean and consistent accounting practices. And that's as much you as anything, because your accountant only takes what you give them. And if we have seen so many times where an accountant will put certain expense items in different line items or group them together over a period of different years, so that when someone comes and looks at those, you can't make heads or tails of what is going on with the business. So please work with your accountant, and it's consistency. It's really something you can do. They take what you give them and they do the tax returns for you, and they do it legally, and they try to find you the best avenue for you and your tax situation. But it's your information, so you really need to make sure they're on the same page as you, and you do things consistently. And the tax returns, well, the accurate profit and loss, income and expense by source, the more you can break that out, the better. So it's not just labor. You break out your labor for all the different segments of your property, and go through each of the categories for both controllable and non-controllable expenses and labor. So that a buyer can come in and say, wow, that's an awfully big expense for that line item. I know I could do better. That's what that's what they have to see in order for them to say, okay, this is a property I can work with. And of course, really clean tax returns. I mean, and if you're thinking about putting it on the market anytime soon, you can't do extensions, because come January, the buyer that's been interested in your property is going to be asking me about tax returns. When can we get their tax returns? So, come January 1, you gotta start getting all those records together and start getting, so you can file those as soon as you possibly can. Complete occupancy records by year, by month, by room. This is really important, because if you're seasonal, if you decided to shut down for any period of time, any of that stuff, you got to be able to show a buyer how your business works. What are the cycles it has, and they can look at it and say, okay, we can do something different. We sold an inn that was only open 6 months a year. For the last 15 years, it's been open year round. I mean, that was one of the biggest factors for them buying it, is they saw an opportunity to, we can double this. I don't think they have, but they've done a lot bigger revenue than we ever did. So have those occupancy rather. Property, state sales, appropriate occupancy, all the different taxes, have your records on those, so that is clear. We get in, I see that being a confusing issue. It doesn't have to be, it's pretty straightforward. So have all that stuff. And certainly give attention to the owner's quarters and any deferred maintenance. Owner's quarters, as Marilyn and Rick and others have said, is really important. Always has been since we got into business in 1989, and that was not a factor for us. We could care less where the owner's quarters were. We just needed this size property at this price, and we can work with that. Now, it's all about that. People have to be comfortable, have to be separated from the inn, and have some kind of space where they can collect themselves. And deferred maintenance is deferred maintenance. So documentations, operations manual, property disclosures, zoning. Certainly if you haven't already started an asset inclusion exclusion list of your furnitures and all of that, please do. And when I say fixtures and equipment, that does mean just that. So all your HVAC and any other kind of equipment that's going to be transferring with the property, if it's going to be a tractor or whatever else, list it and year and make and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about capital improvements. That's really important because to a buyer, they've got to see that you've been making improvements, you've been changing the property, and it gives them an idea of, oh, well, they never did this, and that's something we could do. So it's a list that has to have all licenses and permits. If you're on a septic or well, please get that straightened out right away. That's the last thing that you want to have to get in the way of a sale. That should be inspected and operational to the max, both septic and well, if you have them. Any old appraisals, getting your deed and any easements, surveys, site plans, building plans, all things that you have to have documentation for. So this will be posted on the site, but certainly I will go back to the first and foremost is health when you're thinking about reopening. Protect yourself, your staff. It's not just about the guests. The guests need to get out, and they've chosen you. Protect yourself because you don't know where they've been. How much can you find out about them? You know, that's something you'll have to come up with. The AHLA, and of course, ALP has really good resources. Hotels Mag, Skift. CBRE is a big commercial site. So if you have a larger property, I would be following Colliers and CBRE and a lot of the big commercial folks, because they have a lot of assets that they're managing all over the world, and so they have a really good pulse on what is happening in hospitality. So that's really important. And it's not business as usual by any means. So it's for you all, if you're thinking about selling, I am, just to let you know, I'm trying to implement virtual assessments. So obviously you can send me your financials, but that's not the whole picture you're in. So how do I do evaluation just on financials? Well, if it is all about the financials, I can list it. But if it's not, if it's about the location and the asset value, it's going to be difficult. There are, I think I've got 4 or 5 in the pipeline now, and I must admit it's not going all that smoothly because I need to get square footages, and you need to go out and you need to get accurate square footages on all your rooms and bathrooms and all of that. Will this change? Absolutely, it's going to change, and it's, you know, I see it changing pretty soon. But for the moment, a virtual assessment and getting your property listing it's doable, but it's taking a little bit more time than even I thought. But we'll get those people that want to get listed up and out in front of the public, because we're still getting inquiries. We're still getting people who, for a myriad of reasons, want to get into this business. And you sort of say, why would anybody want to buy a hospitality business when it's been so affected? They have their reasons. Always, you know, they've always been that way. So thank you all.